Welcome back! I'm Kimberly.
I'm Carly.
And we are
The Book Twins.
Alright, today we are coming to you with our very first adult sci-fi book.
Yes. So we have not read a whole lot of sci-fi. I think I've read a little bit more than Kimberly has, but not very much. So there's only like one or two books that we both have read that have both been sci-fi. So this is kind of a new thing for us.
Absolutely. And because we aren't super well read in sci-fi, lots of the tropes and lots of the familiar wording and technology tends to be a little bit more new for us. And because of this, we tend to, when we find sci-fi books to read, we try to go out and see which ones are like the better ones other people have reviewed and recommended to us.
Yeah, and so the one we are going to talk about today is Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey.
Right.
We don't actually have a physical copy with us here today, so we'll just put that up on the screen.
Absolutely. Funny thing, we actually are coming from, we live in Texas, and we just had this last week as a snowstorm,
which was a crazy week.
Was crazy, but we're, as good book lovers do, we got a lot of reading in, so...
So we pretty much read this one while we were all snowed in.
Absolutely.
During this crazy winter storm.
Yes.
But
all right, first, it is essential, I think, to give a little bit of a background or a little bit of a basic synopsis of the standing or the structure of this sci-fi society.
It's a bit of a steep learning curve, at least I thought it was when I was reading it. So we're going to go over a little bit of kind of what the society's like. But without giving anything away, so it doesn't really tell you much about the plot line of the book. It just tells you kind of how things are at the very opening.
Yeah, if anything, it actually gives you a little bit of a heads up of what you're going to be looking at when you read it.
And the TV show, too.
Absolutely. It's funny, this week, I have started the TV show, which is on Amazon Prime. It's called The Expanse. There's 5 seasons, which I assume is the first 5 books. And I have really loved it. And so I was like, hey, Mom, Dad, here's a good TV show that you'll really like. We, as a family, we're Trekkies. We love Star Trek, and anything that's really good sci-fi, we tend to devour. And so I was like, Mom, Dad, here's this. You should watch it. It's on Amazon Prime. And they come back to us. They're like, well, we're a little bit confused of what's going on. We think we might have missed some things. So Carly and I actually sat down and gave them a little bit of an overview, and they're like, that makes more sense. And so they're enjoying it a little bit more.
Yeah, so maybe this will help anyone who's confused with who are just starting the series.
Yes. So it's about, I don't know if any of y'all are Trekkies out there, but it's kind of in between Star Trek time period and our time period. It's like halfway in between. So we have essentially gone out and explored the solar system, but nothing beyond that.
So you've got Earth, which is, of course, where humanity started.
Yes.
You've got the moon. You've got Mars, which has been colonized. And then you've got what they call belters. So you've got, like, the asteroid belt and, like, certain moons who have all been colonized. And there's people living on these stations and these different places.
Right. And they have spent generations on the different places in the solar system. And so they self-identify as either Earthers or Martians or Belters. And with the artificial gravity, there is lower artificial gravity on the space stations out by the asteroid belt, which means that over time, the bodies have gotten used to living in lower gravity. And so it actually has changed the physiology of the human body, up to the point where they look different than people who
grew up with gravity.
Grew up around it. With Earth and Martians and Lunars. And so there is a good rivalry, or as you would maybe call it, a competition between like those who are from Earth and those who are from the Belt. They grew up in such different environments, and they look at each other, they view each other as so different, even though they're all humans.
There's almost like an animosity between everyone else, what they call like the inner planets, and the Belters. So the Belters is kind of like the almost poverty, the outcasts, the working class, the people who you go out to the Belt because it's very different. It's very sparse. Like all the resources, like air, water, like essential things are very sparse and they're very taxed and they're very
yes.
Yeah, so there it's...
And then on Earth, it's free. Like, air is free, and water is just a commodity that exists.
Yeah.
And so there is kind of different viewpoints of where you grew up and where you came from. Earthers are kind of viewed as privileged or the elite simply because they didn't have to fight hard for air. They didn't have to fight hard for water. Mm-hmm. They're kind of taken for granted. And so it makes a really fun or hostile, however you want to look at it, environment in which this book takes place.
And then you've got Mars, which Mars is like the elite colony. It's the most sophisticated. They're almost like the military of the solar system. So they've got like the best warships. They've got the highest or the newest technology, but they don't also have a lot of it. So Earth has not quite as cutting edge technology, but they have more of it. They have more ships. They have more people. They have more resources. Mm-hmm. But Mars has like the better technology and the newer.
A little bit more competitive.
More competitive.
Right.
And so the real rival is almost between Earth and Mars. Hmm. And then you've got the Belt, which no one really takes into account.
Right.
So.
Yes, and so it makes it a good setup for what could possibly happen in this book. Mm-hmm. Book 1 is called Leviathan Wakes, and there are a total of 8 current books published. There is one last book that is set to come out this year. And it supposedly is supposed to be the last book of the series, and it wraps everything up. I am definitely going to be starting the second book soon, and I want to see how it plays out. It catches your attention. There is a steep learning curve, like we said at the beginning. Push through it, keep going, and as you get to know the characters and you get to know the situations of what they're fighting for, it draws you in slowly, and then I got hooked.
Yeah. It took me a while to get to really get into the book, but once I just sat down and took a decent amount of time to start reading, I really got into it. It was fantastic. So for the book, there's 2 viewpoints. So you have got one viewpoint is James Holden, and he's kind of like this, he's an earther, and he was in the Navy, I think it was, and then he got court-martialed, and now he is running water freights in the Belt.
Yes. So water is a scarce commodity in the Belt and the space stations amongst the Belt. And so they have spaceships that go get essentially asteroids made of ice for water consumption. And it is very dangerous, and it is hard labor, but very necessary for all the people who live in the space stations. And so that's where the book starts out. Mm-hmm.
And to the people in the Belt, you don't mess with these types of resources. Like, these are life or death matters to them, which plays a big part in the very opening part of the book, to understand that.
Yes, that's right. And so James Holden is his name, and he is perspective 1. And then the other perspective that it flips back and forth chapter by chapter, his name is Miller.
Yes. Miller is a Belter. He lives on a space station, and he's like a detective, right? So he is a cop. He works just on the space station. I think he has lived there pretty much his whole life.
Yeah, he's around middle-aged. Yeah. And he knows the area very well. He's very well seasoned in his occupation, and they investigate.
They just do what cops do. They keep the peace, keep the station rules in place, and try to keep people safe and do their job, like solve crimes, and so that's where he starts off.
Yes,
and
he's given at the very beginning. He's given a special assignment which carries out through the whole entire book, and it gets him hooked. Miller, the character himself, is described as a little bit past his prime. He's not as sharp as he once was, and he doesn't do the best in all of his assignments anymore. He could have, but he kind of missed his chance to progress and to advance, and he's just kind of...
Well, he had recently been through a divorce, and so he's turned to alcohol. So he's an alcoholic. That's what he does. He goes to his shift, and then he goes to the bar afterwards. And so that's where it starts off with Miller. And then as the book progresses, you progress with Miller's character, and of course with Jane's character.
Yes,
And
as well.
it gets really good. And the thing about the two characters is they're like starkly different. They are kind of the polar opposites of each other, and throughout the book, that they play off each other because of how different they are. And the way how different they understand like the politics of what's going on in the solar system, because James Holden is an Earther and Miller's a Belter. And so they understand both perspectives. So you get to see a little bit of both perspectives.
Yes, and this book doesn't really take place at all in any kind of planet. It's all in space stations and spaceships, which makes it very feel very sci-fi. And I don't expect that to continue throughout the rest of the series because there are happenings
that happens
in the solar system that takes place on planets as well. So I do expect that to change, but at least for book 1, they're on spaceships and space
where
stations.
They are at. And the whole entire book is just on spaceships or space stations. So.
Yes. And one thing, a little bit to digress, Jim Holden, just to kind of give a little bit of detail on his personality, which I have explained to our parents, just to kind of help you understand him. He is like a morally righteous character. He doesn't really care what other people think. He just wants to do what he believes is right to his own morals, which can cause some problems, but it is interesting to see how he attacks certain problems in certain situations in the book, having his need to be righteous to his own morals.
Because Holden kind of sees things in black and white in a way, and Miller works pretty much in gray areas his entire career.
Yes.
And so that
makes it
kind of how it goes.
Yeah, interesting.
It makes it interesting.
Especially when they meet up.
Yeah.
Like, that's great.
It's a great scene when they meet up. So,
yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah. So, I really enjoyed it. Definitely one of the best sci-fi books that I have read. And I would definitely recommend. Yes. Carly, what do you think?
Well, for me, it didn't hook me right away, so that's a bit of a drawback. I like books that, can get you within the first
little bit. But it is a little bit more typical for adult books.
That's true.
For there to be a gradual increase of plot, and it takes a little bit longer for you to understand the world and for you to understand the characters. I know that for YA books, it is more typical for it to catch you right at the first chapter, for you to understand the world, for you to understand the characters and who they are and what they're going for, which adult, it tends to be more complex, and it does lead up and have a little bit more of a build-up for the characters and the environment or the situation in which they're in, and that held true.
That's true.
For this book. And I can definitely foresee, even though I haven't read the other books, that it was a good groundwork that they laid for future books. So I'm excited to see what I think about the other books in the series.
That's true. I think I personally would give it like an 86.
Yeah, I would say like a high B.
Yeah,
like an 87, 88.
It was a really good book, and I expect the series to continue to get better.
Right. And one thing, we are going to do a later video about the season 1 of The Expanse of the show. I have already started it, and actually what I did, and I do want to put that out there for all those of you who want to read and watch the show. Yeah. The show does follow the book chronologically, so there's no spoilers that come into the show that aren't revealed in the book. So you can, if you want to, watch episode 1 and then read some chapters and watch episode 2 and then read some more chapters, and to kind of fully appreciate different people's interpretations when they make it into a show.
Yeah. So watch out for that video for when we review the TV series.
Absolutely. And tell us what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are you going to read this book because we say, or you're like, X-nay on the sci-fi. I don't like sci-fi. I'm going to stick to what I like.
And if you've already read it, tell us what you thought the pros and cons of the book were.
We want to know. Comment below.
See you next time.
Bye.